China's #2 general goes missing, decoding the absence fueling political speculation. The Chinese military officials in brown uniforms fan out around rows of young trees, shoveling soil into freshly dug pits. The camera pans to the most senior leaders one by one, in order of rank. But one prominent face is conspicuously absent. The news segment, aired Wednesday night on China's state broadcaster, features a tree planting event in the outskirts of the capital Beijing, an annual springtime tradition for the country's military leadership, spanning more than 4 decades. But General Weidong, the second highest-ranking uniformed officer in the People's Liberation Army, was nowhere to be seen. Nor was he named as a participant in a report by the official state news agency. General He's absence from the high-profile event has fueled ongoing speculation that the second-ranking vice-chairman of the powerful Central Military Commission may have become the latest and most senior casualty in leader Xi Jinping's purge of the military's top ranks. As Xi's #2 general, he shares a long-standing relationship with the Chinese leader, dating back decades to the early days of their careers in the coastal province of Fujian. Rumors about an investigation against He first surfaced among the Chinese dissident community following China's annual political meetings last month. The 67-year-old hasn't appeared in public for 3 weeks since the closing ceremony of the country's rubber-stamp legislature on March 11th. The Chinese government has offered little in the way of clearing the air. When asked about He's situation at a news briefing on March 27th, Defense Ministry spokesperson Wu Qian said, "There is no information on this matter, and we are not aware of the situation." It is now unclear what has happened to He, who also sits on the Communist Party's 24-member Politburo. 3 weeks out of the public eye is not unheard of for a top general without a public-facing role, and there is always a chance he resurfaces. But his no-show at a well-choreographed annual propaganda event stands out in a political system deeply attuned to the importance of symbolism. Clearly the absence of one CMC vice chair is important symbolically, said James Char, a longtime PLA expert and assistant professor at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies in Singapore. Similar to the Communist Party congresses and annual 2-sessions political gatherings, it's important for all the major figures that the rest of the world know of to show up to be in the same picture, because it helps to demonstrate the power and, more importantly, the unity of the party, Char said. Reading the tree leaves. In the opaque world of Chinese politics, observers have long leaned on arcane signals of Communist Party traditions and protocol to interpret what is going on behind the scenes. The discipline, known as tea leaf reading, has become more relevant than ever in Xi's era, as he centralizes power into his own hands and makes the decision-making process even more obscure. And now some experts are scouring this week's events for clues on the fate of one of Xi's top generals. The annual ritual began as part of a nationwide tree-planting campaign launched by late Paramount leader Deng Xiaoping in late 1981, following devastating floods he blamed on rampant deforestation. It was billed as a patriotic, selfless undertaking in greening the motherland, building socialism and benefiting future generations. The following spring, Deng, then chairman of the CMC, planted the first tree of the campaign, setting a tradition that has since been carried on by successive Chinese leaders and military top brass. Wednesday marked the 43rd consecutive year the CMC leadership has collectively participated in the voluntary tree planting activity in the capital, said Xinhua, the state news agency. Chinese President Xi Jinping waves as he drives after inspecting the troops during a parade to celebrate the 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China at Tiananmen Square in 1949, on October 1, 2019, in Beijing, China. Xi brought down powerful rivals in the military, now he's going after his own men. Since Xi came to power in late 2012, his 2 vice chairmen on the CMC had led military officers to plant trees without fail every spring, until his rare absence on Wednesday. The first-ranking CMC Vice Chairman General Zhang Yuxia attended the event. So did two other generals on the commission, Liu Zhenli and Zhang Shengmin. The only other uniformed CMC member who did not show up was Admiral Miao Hua, who was suspended under investigation in November for, well, serious violations of discipline, a common euphemism for corruption and disloyalty. I think his absence is quite telling, but again, no one can be absolutely sure, Char said. There's another school of thought, which is, Weidong was involved in the last 2 weeks with the preparations for the military exercises around Taiwan. Starting from Tuesday, combined forces of the PLA's Eastern Theater Command held surprise exercises around Taiwan for 2 straight days, testing capabilities to blockade the self-ruling island, simulate strikes on its ports and other critical infrastructure, and launch long-range live-fire strikes. The commander of the Eastern Theater Command from 2019 to 2022 was He. It was during his tenure that the Eastern Theater Command staged massive military drills and fired missiles around Taiwan in August 2022, in retaliation against then U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taipei. A prolonged absence from public view does not always signal trouble for Chinese officials. Some have resurfaced and resumed their duties. It's also not uncommon for officials to be taken in for questioning by graft busters to assist investigations into colleagues. Last November, Defense Minister Dong Jun was reported to be under investigation for corruption by the Financial Times, citing U.S. officials. China's defense ministry dismissed the report as a sheer fabrication. Dong re-emerged in public a week later. The minister was also seen attending Wednesday's tree planting event on the state broadcaster. When Chinese leader Xi Jinping began his 3rd term in 2022, he stacked the Central Military Commission with 6 loyalists. Now, one of them has been expelled from the Communist Party for corruption, another was suspended under investigation, and a third missed a high-profile event this week. After coming to power, Xi consolidated control over the world's largest military by taking down powerful generals from rival factions and replacing them with allies and loyal protégés. But a decade on, having structurally overhauled the People's Liberation Army and stacked its top ranks with his own men, Xi is still knee-deep in his seemingly endless struggle against graft and disloyalty, and is increasingly turning against his own hand-picked loyalists. Since the summer of 2023, more than a dozen high-ranking figures in China's defense establishment have been ousted in a sweeping purge that focused on the country's nuclear force and equipment procurement, including 2 defense ministers promoted to the CMC by Xi. The ongoing turmoil roiling the senior ranks of the PLA has raised questions over Xi's ability to end systemic corruption in the military and enhance its combat readiness at a time of heightened geopolitical tensions. Recurring purges of the senior-most PLA leaders indicate that Xi Jinping distrusts his officer corps, said Drew Thompson, a senior fellow at the RSIS. The constant removal of so many senior officers, as well as the extent of corruption running to the very top, undoubtedly has an effect on the PLA's morale, and likely also its military capabilities, Thompson added. But some analysts noted that by this point, the PLA may have well become accustomed to the shakeups in its high command. Leadership purges in the PLA seem to have become normalized to a point that it's just part and parcel of being the PLA, said Collin, another research fellow at RSIS.